right, so this first image is by Jessica. You're at ISO 141 millimeters. So just as a reminder, we generally want to use a little bit of a longer lens when photographing people. Not always, but I want to keep bringing that up for students so they get used to that. You're at f7.1, so kind of an in-between aperture there, and 1/125th of a second. So all of those settings look good. Now, I can tell that you have a manual white balance on this, and that is not quite correct. So if we come over to the develop module and play with that white balance, I think if we adjust it a little bit, you can see how those colors are cleaner now. There's no color cast to the image. So when you're photographing outdoors, it's important that you just set this to auto white balance, and you should be shooting all of your images in RAW at this point, since you know how to post-process them. So in that case, there would not be a color cast to it, right? You'd be doing all of your adjustments in post-processing. So yeah, I hope you can see that change of color cast. What did I try? Like 15 and 5 or so? See that difference of the whites, the grays being gray, and the purity of those colors, and how this has that yellow tone to it, a warmer tone to it. All right, so you have your husband's uncle, I believe you said. So it's someone that's not a complete stranger to you, but someone that you don't spend a lot of time with. And he's a jokester, and you wanted to capture that in this image. And I think that comes across like he looks like, what did I do? Like he just got in trouble for something and he's being blamed, and he's an adult, but he's acting like a 5-year-old. And I think that's really fun, that playfulness that we're seeing. As you're cropping, make sure to not crop in on the hands. That's a pretty harsh crop that you have on the edge here. And then the lighting that you're using is actually pretty nice lighting. It's midday. Let's see, what time of day did you photograph this at? Yeah, 12:40 in the afternoon, or 1:40 in the afternoon is when it was taken, it looks like. So the middle of the afternoon. The light's coming from this side though, so just turning his face, and I saw that in your contact sheet, creates much more pleasing lighting. So this image has much more pleasing light on it, and if you were to add a reflector in to open this up even more, I think that would work great. So it's not that the time of day that you photographed is necessarily wrong, but make sure that you're adjusting your subject to best utilize the light, because having his face lit up really emphasizes this expression that he's trying to communicate, right? All right, and then this image is by Kassandra, and Kassandra, it sounds like you don't want to be out much either, and I completely understand that. So you photographed your neighbor. You're photographing this at, let's see, it says 9 p.m. Oh, no, it says 12 p.m. So lunch, that's what you had said. She was going out to lunch with her dad, I think. ISO 100, 38 millimeters, f5 at 1/250th of a second. So those settings all look good. It seems like you're pretty close to her if you're shooting this at 38 millimeters. And as I keep saying that it's important to shoot with a little bit of a longer lens, there's also something about shooting with a wider lens that forces you to get closer to your subject, that alone can increase the intimacy, and that gets communicated in the picture. So I think that comes through in this image, that you're a little bit closer to her, and you're communicating your friendliness with her. You're still outside, you're still hopefully being safe about this. The light's coming from above, and it really has beautiful qualities as it's illuminating the back of her hair. And again, just like I said with Jessica's image, turning her so we could get some of that light on her face would be best. And that might be that you move her to a different location. It might be that you bring in a reflector. It might be that you utilize what's around you. Like if she could go next to a white wall, and maybe that white wall is out of the frame, but that's creating that reflector to bounce light back on her, that could all work well. But we really want her face to be a little bit brighter than the background. Also, if you would use that longer lens, like I had mentioned, that would allow the background to fall even further out of focus. So remember, f5 is going to be a smaller depth of field if you're shooting with a longer lens. And while this looks great, right? These trees, and they're like creating a frame within a frame over her, and the colors are all working really well with what she's wearing. Like, this looks very planned out. This van becomes a distraction. So changing your angle of view or blurring that out by having a shallower depth of field could help improve this image. She has a great expression on her face. She looks like she's comfortable with you with photographing her. So you're getting closer and communicating with her and making her feel comfortable, I think, was great. And I'm glad she was happy with that image. Yeah, so you have the light being kind of a distraction in these areas, but if you maybe had her step back a little bit further, that light might be more pleasing as it came across her whole face. But playing with this background, I think, works better than the parking lot background or the tree right above her head background. And then the last image that we're going to look at in this group of 3 is Bridgette's, and we're at ISO 200. 36 millimeters, f11 at 1/100th of a second. So all of those settings look good. Now, you had also said that you are very concerned about the virus, and I think you should be. So I'm glad that you're doing something that feels comfortable with you as you're photographing someone that's familiar to you, but maybe someone that's not been photographed by you before. So you picked this really interesting wall that not only is visually interesting, but has a lot of meaning to it. Before I die, I want to, and then all of these different answers and people writing over each other's answers. And it's just really interesting, the colors and the meaning behind it. You have really beautiful light on your subject. The light's coming in, it looks like it's open shade. Illuminating this side of him, illuminating this side of his face. Falls off a little bit here. I wonder if you had any images, and I didn't see any in your contact sheet, of him looking the opposite direction to get that light on his face. But even as you have it here, just on one side of his face, I think it's working really well. I just want his face to be the brightest area, not for the jacket to be lit up more than he is. So that's where the divide comes in there. Having him fairly close to the wall, I think, could be problematic. We've seen some images in this this group of critiques, where students have their subjects too close to the wall. But here, that layering, the importance that we see what's on the wall, I think works well. So having him next to that is a better choice. And then his shirt kind of matches the craziness that's in the background, right? Having all these characters, it looks like a Rugrat characters on his shirt, really matches what's going on in the background visually. So I think that's a nice aspect. It's also great, and we can't see this in this picture, but it looks like he had the yellow chalk and wrote "fuck" up here, and then he's wearing yellow. So that echoing of what is important here, I think, works well. Okay, let's look at your contact sheet. So yeah, it looks like he's facing the opposite way for all of your images, but this was a great contact sheet for me to see, like the time that you spent with this subject and your attention to light, I think, has really improved. So we see nice light in these images, we see nice light here. Here it looks like it might be brighter out, but you have him in more open shade. In some of the images, it looks like maybe a little bit more light on him could help. But in a lot of them, it looks like you're really paying attention to the direction the light's coming from and where he is in regards to that. An image like this, like his skin is dark and then the background is so blown out that that's not going to work very well. And then again, here we're losing detail because there's not great light on him. But most of the rest of these images, you're working with really beautiful light. So it's nice to see not just that you have beautiful light on the image that you turned in, but you have it again and again and again on your contact sheet.